Teens share everything. That may include the bacteria that can cause meningococcal disease known as meningitis. Even if your teen's been vaccinated in the past, they could still be missing meningitis vaccinations. Ask your teen's doctor or visit meningitis.com today. Sponsored by GSK.
It was like my whole life came together. And I'm like, I'm going to help anyone become weight healthy. And part of that is we have to meet your body and understand that we make these hormones, and these hormones actually regulate our weight health, which is where the bigger conversation where we are today. Yeah.
I think that's what's missing when we just head first with judgment into this conversation and assuming, oh, this is just a quick fix or it's a cheat. I'm saying that in air quotes, everyone. Because we all are different, what works for us, but also the past and the history we have. I mean, I, as a physical therapist, have seen the gateway into movement for people is vast and varied. And I'm going to meet someone there. I'm not going to close the door because they didn't get into movement in the way I wanted them to. I'm going to meet them where they are and use my tools as a practitioner to help them feel confident in movement. And I think bringing that nuance to this conversation is so important so we don't leave anyone behind. I'm Jessica Valant. I'm a physical therapist, women's health expert, and Pilates teacher, and my goal is to help all women feel strong, safe, and secure in their bodies. In this podcast, I'll share expert advice, facts, amazing guests, stories, compassion, and hope to help you meet your body in all seasons of life. Hi, we have such an important discussion to bring to you today, and I wanted to give a little bit of a personal introduction before I introduce our guest and get into this interview. We are talking all about GLP-1s, and for months I have known I wanted to bring this information to you, and I was looking for the right expert to do it. Everything we do here in the business, all the content that I offer you, especially here at Meet Your Body, but also all the workouts in Unlimited, everything we do is meant to empower you through knowledge. In some ways, we try to bring you science-backed knowledge so you know exactly the facts, of what's going on, and then also empowering you so that you know how to advocate for yourself, so you know how to ask the right questions, so you know how to seek information, you know how to listen to your body. All of that to say, GLP-1s are everywhere right now. You can find quick hit information through commercials, on social media, and from your neighbors down the street, most likely. It's everywhere. So to avoid this conversation would be irresponsible of me and what I try to do for you. I wanted to bring you, again, the facts around GLP-1s and just clear up what they are. I even needed to know this background. For example, did you know GLP-1 is a hormone that we produce in our bodies? We get into that today. So what we're going to talk about is exactly that. Like, what truly are GLP-1s? What are the definition of that? Why are they out there in the information sphere right now? Why are people using them as a tool for their own health? What are some alternatives? And then mostly, if you do choose to go down that path, what are questions that you need to know to ask? How do you find a healthcare provider that is truly going to support you and your health? Because that's important, and we dive into that. And there's some really, really important supportive strategies that you need from any healthcare provider that is going to walk this path with you. And then again, how to listen to your own body, how to advocate for yourself, how to know what's right for you, and then the foundational pieces that you always need that we come back to over and over again. Nourishing your own nervous system, meeting your body where it is, getting sleep, eating nourishing foods, moving your body every day, coming back to the pillars and the foundation of that. I am excited to bring this to you today because I want to be that place for you that you know is a trusted source of accurate information, but also compassion, understanding, and non-judgment so that you can meet your body where it is in any given time of life and any season of life. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Ashley Koff is a registered dietitian and is the USA Today bestselling author of Your Best Shot and founder of the Better Nutrition program. With over 25 years of experience, Ashley's helped redefine how we approach sustainable, lasting weight health. In her new book, Your Best Shot, Ashley introduces weight health hormones such as GLP-1, GIP, CCK, and PYY, and offers the first ever system for assessing and optimizing these hormones, whether you're using GLP-1 medications or not. A trusted expert featured across major media and a sought-after educator for health professionals, Ashley blends cutting-edge science with everyday practicality. I am honored to be able to bring this to you today so that you can use this information in a way that is best for you. And you simply may or may not add it as a tool to your overall toolbox. And again, to the foundation of knowing your body, nourishing your nervous system, moving your body, eating in a nourishing way, and believing in yourself. I am thrilled to bring this conversation with Ashley Koff to you today. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Meet Your Body. This is a conversation, I kid you not, I have been waiting months. First, I was waiting months to find the right expert to bring you to have this conversation. And then next, when I reached out to Ashley and her great team, I have been waiting for this day. Ashley, thank you for being here. I'm so excited.
Oh, I'm so excited. And I love the title of your podcast. I was checking out some episodes. I'm like, this is great because this is what we need. Yeah.
That's exactly right. Exactly.
Yes.
So tell us, I read your bio, so everyone has kind of heard, but I would just love for you to tell us, like in your own words, what brought you to where you are now, to the message that you are spreading? Like what made you realize in your career, in your life, that this was something that needed to be talked about?
Yeah, I think the first piece was my 8-year-old self. So as I recall, pre-8, I was, just vibrant, super empowered, totally bossy. But like definitely like, I think you would say like just happy, healthy kid, right? And that was the mantra, like happy, healthy kid. And then one of the, like in writing this book, this actually like came out for me. I was going to my niece's 8-year-old birthday party and all of a sudden like these tears just came out of nowhere. And I was like, where are these tears coming from? I was writing her, her birthday card. And so this like didn't happen while I was writing it. It was like after the book was out.
Yeah.
And I go and I was like, oh my God, I was like beat up. Like in second grade, some boy took me out back and was like trying to force another boy to kiss me. So we were like both being bullied. And then he starts punching me in my belly and he's like, you're fat. No one wants to kiss you. Nobody's going to want to kiss you. And he's like punching my belly. Like I grew up with brothers. Like that was not my first punch. Let me be clear. Like I was like a boy, like played with boys, all that stuff. That moment, I don't remember, so traumatic. So I don't remember like what happened around that moment. Psychologically, though, something shifted, and it was how I saw myself from then on was I had this weakness. I had a problem, and society would actually then tell me I had a problem. I was no longer happy, healthy kid. I was, you are not normal when you go into the doctor now. You're on a chart that says you're fat, you're overweight, you're obese. You have a problem. And in my mind, this is going to sound effed up, so I just want to be clear. It was worse than somebody saying you have a health problem. Because I think if somebody had said you have a health problem, it would be like, oh, pity, or like, how do we medication? And I don't want to diminish any health problem out there. This was, no, it's yours. Like, it's your problem. You have to eat differently. You have to exercise differently. And by the way, differently than everyone that you're around.
Yep.
And at age 8, it's yours to manage. Like, you have to lose weight, right? So for me, this started as I was charged with, and because when I was given a problem to solve, I was like, I'm not going to be weak. I'm a strong, like I'm going. And I was in a family of resources. I was a girl who was never told being a girl was anything different than a boy. Like you can go out there and do it. So that moment for me was, I am going to do what I am told perfectly because I don't want this problem. weight loss took me through such a disempowering my body, not giving it the resources that it needed, making it me a worse athlete, having me not have what my body needed when I was having my period, like all of this, just different stuff. Because I was not happy with my body, it increased my participation in what I'll call risky behaviors. I was drinking young. I was not willing to speak up if somebody like disrespected me or my body, like these kinds of things. So you go through all of that, like all of that dining. And I know I'm not unique in that space. What was so interesting for me was years later, and I share it in a very funny way in the book, but this is the emotional part. Years later, I would meet a gastroenterologist after having given up on doctors, given up on ever being able to lose my belly. But he actually was the first person who never put me on a scale and never asked about my weight. And he was like, "Did you take antibiotics?" And I was like, "Yeah, like all the time. I had ear infections. I had throat infections. I ruined so many family vacations." And they were like, get rid of those. That was the other trajectory moment. There are 3 of them. That was the moment that I realized he said to me, "It's not what you're eating or not eating or how hard you're exercising. Your body doesn't have what it needs to run better. And very specifically, your digestion needs repair." Right? And so that's my verbiage of it, but that's what I set out to do. That changed me. That changed the trajectory of my life. I became a dietitian. And I would go on to be a dietitian in Los Angeles, where I think I probably sought it out on the weight side, but you don't really have to seek weight out anywhere, but definitely not in Los Angeles. And so I was seeing patients on that side, kids, adults, et cetera. And then the world of bariatrics, weight loss surgery. And when I saw weight loss surgery patients and saw that like literally overnight, their diabetes changed, like was gone. And then their relationship to their need for food, that sense of fullness, like all this other stuff. And I asked a doctor and I said, this was 2004. So put in perspective, that was Janet Jackson's wardrobe malfunction, right? Like the Super Bowl, right? Or that was the first year of the Facebook, right? So that was a long time ago. And so in that moment, that doctor said to me, "Oh, it's their incretin. It's the incretin effect. It's their incretin hormones." And I'm like, "Stop. Something I never learned about in school. What are you talking about?" So I went back and I started, at the time, we just had like encyclopedias and books and, whatever, and no Googling. And so I'm like looking, I'm learning, and I was like, oh my gosh, we have hormones that the best that we knew at that point was that they tell insulin and glucagon to go to work. But then there was some early work on, are they involved in leptin and ghrelin? Are they involved in your hunger, and satiety? Okay. Well, we now know those as GLP-1 and GIP. And at that moment, 2004, I'm like, wait a second. They're made and deployed from the lining of our digestive tract. I had learned that my fat belly was because of my digestive tract problem. So it was like my whole life came together. And I'm like, I'm going to help anyone become weight healthy. And part of that is we have to meet your body and understand that we make these hormones, and these hormones actually regulate our weight health, which is where the bigger conversation where we are today. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of that, I mean, it is amazing. Like you said, I've never heard of those hormones. I mean, ever in my life. They're not talked about. It sounds futuristic, and yet it's just what all of us should have known all along. And so I love that you're bringing it back to this idea of GLP-1s, because I will say, even myself included, it's such we throw the word around, which we just throw it around all the time. I mean, everyone listening at this point has heard it over and over again, commercials and social media and neighbors and everyone. And yet most of us would not be able to tell you what in the world it is, right? We just think, oh, it's just a shot. Well, what is it for? Right? And now you're saying, oh, this is something I produce. So let's back up and you talk to us all like we are literally newbies to this, because most of us are. What the words you just used, GLP-1s and the other one, tell us what that is. And then tell us kind of how that relates to this new verbiage that we have around what are peptides, what's Ozempic, where does that fit in? Give us the high level on all of that.
Yes. And we would be on I know, because I spent about a week recording my book. It would take us about, good 8 hours for the next 5 days to do this. So that is why I wrote my book. But I'm going to give you the key pieces. But if anyone says this is incomplete, it is incomplete. So I just want to acknowledge that. Okay. I just gave this talk to 2 fifth graders. So I think that's where I'm going to lean in. Not that I think anyone here is a fifth grader, but this is interesting. So I said to them, do you know what hormones are? And some of them were kind of like, maybe, yes, no. And I said, okay, well, in the body, we have communication vessels, right? We have communication that has to occur. And these communicators are hormones. Hormones are made from fats or they're made from proteins. So they're either what we call steroid or they're peptide on that part.
Okay.
And hormones basically are deployed from something and they go to a receptor. The receptor means they're received. And when the hormone is received, it activates something. It might tell a neurotransmitter to go to work. It might tell another hormone to go to work. It might tell something to change from this shape to this shape. That's what it does, right? So the analogy that I gave to the fifth graders is like, imagine if your cars are going into, a community and they're like the car is supposed to go into the garage in order for you to get into the house and the stuff to happen. I don't even know if that was a good analogy, but anyway, they were picking up what I was putting down. So we talked hormones. So I said, some of you might know hormones. There happened to be a child in the room that I knew as a type 1 diabetic. I said, so some of our bodies make insulin and some of our bodies don't make insulin. So if you don't make insulin, but we need insulin because insulin goes into the bloodstream and helps pick up sugar that's in there and deliver it into the cells. And if we don't have that, then the cells can't do what they're supposed to do and the bloodstream stays backed up. We need that insulin. You go, okay. So if we don't make insulin at all, what does Johnny do? Johnny gets insulin. So Johnny showed off his pump and was like, I have a pump and here's my insulin. So to date, I don't know that there are people that don't make GLP-1 or that don't make GIP, that they don't have them at all. I don't think we have identified that.
Okay.
But we might have people where they don't make enough of it or it isn't for some reason. So we have type 2 diabetics. We have people that make insulin, but the insulin might not be enough for the amount of sugar that's in the blood, or it might not get the message to go pick up that sugar on time. So it's like late, and you're left hanging out at school waiting for mom to come pick you up, or there are other factors that could be at play. So when we had that conversation, they were like, okay, yeah. And so somebody was like, my mom's type 2 diabetic. So we went through that. So if we're all adults here, we know, or not, but we know thyroid, testosterone, estrogen, progesterone, human growth hormone, like we know hormones. Vitamin D is a hormone. So what we now need to know is GLP-1, GLP-2, which nobody knows about, GIP, PYY, CCK. Literally, this is just alphabet soup. Amylin, which you're going to start hearing about because there's a new medication. Oxymodulin, you might start hearing about. These are all hormones. And they are peptide hormones, which means they're made from proteins. So those hormones, GLP-1, GIP, PYY, CCK, they tell other hormones to go to work. And here's what gets interesting. They tell insulin and glucagon how to work. So that's your blood sugar system. They tell leptin and ghrelin. That's your am I hungry, am I full? They impact osteocalcin and our osteoblasts and our osteoclasts. So that's your bone building. They also have receptor sites in our endothelial tissue. So that's our arterial wall. So they're impacting blood flow. And we know in the gut, they're also involved in how the gut functions, which means gut inflammation on that part. So that is a super oversimplification. But here's the kicker. If it's a peptide hormone made of a bunch of amino acids, and there are a variety of them, we have to have all those amino acids. Now, we might be eating some amount of protein. We might be eating one kind, like I eat chicken for breakfast, I eat chicken for lunch, I eat chicken for dinner. I might not get all the amino acids in all the amounts that I want to make all of these hormones. Or maybe I'm eating enough protein, but when I take it in, my digestion is not breaking it down, absorbing it, and then turning it in. Maybe genetically, I don't have good enzyme staplers to turn it into a peptide. There are all sorts of reasons. And then when we understand that in order to tell these hormones to go to work, our senses, so we need to sense that we are getting food, and the body actually needs to believe that it is in receipt of, in particular, proteins and fats, a little bit of carbohydrates. And that sends signals from the brain via the vagus nerve down to the gut, where it knocks on the door of the cells. The cells have to hear the knock, not be listening to other things, hear the knock, have enough of the resource there, deploy the resource. And now the resource has to go to all those places that we were talking about via the bloodstream, which could be sticky or could be backed up or could not be flowing because it's dehydrated, or via the vagus nerve, which could be like, I have trauma or I'm undernourished or you're sitting all the time or whatever. And it needs to get where it's supposed to go. Here is the kicker: in 2 to 5 minutes. because that is the amount of active time for GLP-1 and GIP in the human body as we were designed. That was brilliant pre-industrialization when we just needed it for a little bit. And when we were pretty regular, sun comes up, you eat something. Middle of the day, hopefully you have food available in the evening. And there was nothing like going on, that was really interfering with a lot of this. So when we look at where we are today and we understand these hormones, we can understand that many of us do not have optimally functioning hormone levels, just like many of us don't have optimally functioning thyroid, et cetera. Your GLP-1 agonist medications, semaglutide, tirzepatide, retatrutide, liraglutide, the original one. Those are the only ones I'm going to talk about. I'm not going to talk about orforglipron, which is new but different. Those medications were developed because they learned that there was an animal, a reptile, a Gila monster, that instead of having this hormone that stays on for 2 to 5 minutes, it stays on for 30 days. Well, they took that peptide chain and they went into a lab and they said, if we played around with that, could we get a version that would maybe stay on for a couple of hours? And they did. The first one was Byetta, 2005. That's the first one that I worked with. And that stayed on for about 4 hours. So it was a twice daily injection. And they saw people with diabetes suddenly have all of these benefits. They were like, wait a second, because the hormone that tells insulin to go to work is now on time, showing up for work, and is never missing its schedule. It's just doing it. We're injected, but you had to inject yourself twice a day on that part. Then we got to once a day. Then we got to 7 days. That's where so if we want to think about anything and sort of close the loop on the story, your GLP-1 and your GIP stay on for 2 to 5 minutes. Those hormones regulate bone, muscle, fat, hydration, blood sugar, blood flow, and as a result, really inflammation. That's a kind of a lot, that they're doing in the body. If those aren't working optimally, you're going to struggle with your weight health regardless. And we now have available a form of medication that is weight health hormone replacement therapy. So just like we've had sex hormone replacement therapy, thyroid replacement therapy, but where those hormones are 1-for-1. If I take insulin, it's the same as, that kind of thing. This hormone is staying on, the medication is staying on for maybe a day or 7 days, as opposed to 2 to 5 minutes. So there's pros and considerations in understanding what that's going to do in the body because of how long it stays on. So thank you for allowing me the platform for a 10-minute discussion on that, but that's what it is. That's meet your body.
I'll be a fifth grader any day if it means people will break this down for us. That is so helpful. And tell me where, because I do know this general term of peptides, which is being used more and more and more. And I feel like some people are using it interchangeably with GLP-1. Some people, when they say peptides, they mean a whole other class. So if someone is talking about, I've used, because this is what I've heard, I've used peptides for my skin. I've used peptides for this. What exactly do they mean by that? And where does the GLP-1 come in? Because I know you said GLP-1 is a type of peptide.
Yes. So peptide means a chain of amino acids. That's all that means. So it means basically like chicken would be, that's a way oversimplification or probably wrong. But anyway, anything that had a chain of amino acids in it would be a peptide. We have peptide hormones and we have peptides that are not hormones. So GLP-1 and GIP, think of the P in there as GLP-1 and GIP. Those are peptide hormones. So that's what you want to understand in that part. Insulin happens to be a peptide hormone. Testosterone is a steroid hormone. Now, there are all these other chains of amino acids because that's how the body works. We have peptides all over the place. So whether you're using a peptide like externally, and we call that exogenous, or we're dealing with endogenous production of peptides, it is an amino acid that is stapled to either the same or a different amino acid, and it's created in a chain. That's why our body's ability to break down food into usable amino acids so that it can create these peptides, or the body's ability to, to assemble those, and staple them together, is really important for us to understand. So when somebody uses peptides on your skin, or they're injecting them for pain, or they're using them to help their inflammation or their gut, or any of that other stuff, one of the things we have to look at is, number one, we've mostly had to make them injectable because they don't survive as a chain, the stomach's temperature. So the temperature would break apart, that it would break it apart, and then it wouldn't get where it's supposed to go as a peptide. That's why we inject it. There's been we've identified this way to, it's kind of funny because it's called a snack, SNAC, which I think is, I find it funny.
Yeah.
I like weird nutrition humor, but when you add snack onto a peptide chain, there is a way to consume it orally. And that means that when it goes into the stomach, it survives, it gets to the stomach because it's coated. And then as it starts to break down, there's a momentary change in the pH, just in one spot. So it's not like disrupting the whole stomach. But there's a momentary change that allows for it to be absorbed as the whole peptide chain. That's the theory that's there. Now, there are now GLP-1 medications. I'm very frustrated they're calling them GLP-1. But there now are GLP-1 medications that are small molecule non-peptide. That's what orforglipron is. So that is able to be consumed orally, and it is not a peptide. That's different than oral tirzepatide or oral semaglutide, which is the version that I was just describing on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, if you're wondering like why we're getting into the weeds here, because this is why. Because you're probably saying to yourself, oh yeah, I've heard these words thrown around, and they are getting thrown around everywhere. This is why you're seeing like all the Super Bowl commercials that came out. There's commercials everywhere. I see people all over social media trying to promote and sell. And I want you to be able to make empowered decisions for yourself. And it doesn't mean you have to know everything. It just means you need to kind of be able to ask the right questions, right? When you see a provider, is this right for me? Is it going to help me with my goals? So will you kind of take us to that next piece for people who are saying, yeah, okay, I just want to know more about this for myself. Like, what does this mean? Talk us through, I guess, kind of maybe the clients that you're seeing, what questions they're asking, the basics of who might be a candidate for a GLP-1 medication.
Yeah. So I think, thank you for going there, because I think that I was hoping for that qualifying moment. The larger peptide conversation is a much larger one. And I think we shouldn't have that. But I think what we should talk about here is, so I created the first ever assessment of your own GLP-1 GIP function for clinicians, really, because I've been teaching clinicians this for easily the last 4 to 5 years. And I wanted to be able to say, like, hey guys, it's not as simple as, there isn't a blood test. And even when we look at your labs, like, we need more information than that. So as an example, as a kid, one of the diet tools I was told was to stop eating when you're 80% full. So I sat down to do the math problem, and I'm like, 0.8 times, I don't know. Like, I literally never felt full. So I was like, how do I know? Like, and then I was like, well, I guess I just eat, like on that part. So I didn't feel full. And what was interesting was I would sit and I would eat. Now, sometimes could I be eating too fast? Sometimes could I be eating things like that are fat and sugar that might override satiety? There's a whole variety of different things. But I would not feel full really until I felt overfull, or till time later, or I wouldn't feel full. And I'd be like, how do I remember like sitting next to someone who had 4 pieces of a sushi roll, like not 4 rolls, but 4 pieces. And I had 4 pieces, and I'm like, I'm starved. Like, I haven't even started, right? And I was like trying to talk to someone. They're like, it's okay for you to keep eating, right? And so I was like, okay, I'll eat a little bit more. But then I was like, but I could probably, if I just left to my own devices, be like, I'll have 4 sushi rolls or 5 sushi, like that kind of thing. So a sign like that is going to help me understand that the inability to feel full might be as valuable as what is your fasting insulin, right? Or what is your HSCRP, that kind of thing. So I bring that up. The one that I can tell you across the board is, if you do my digestive assessment and it doesn't come out perfect, just kidding, nothing's perfect. But if it doesn't come out, hey, my digestion is good, ideally optimal, you have an issue with your GLP-1 and your GIP, because they're in the lining of the digestive tract and because your nutrient absorption, and everything else on that part. So that's usually what delineates like optimal from suboptimal, in that space. And then there's an added component to this, which is, and this is where I think it gets really interesting, because remember, the medications were designed for people who have diabetes, right? And so sometimes historically, we used to call it diabetics, and we're trying to remember that it's a person who has diabetes as opposed to, so I'm just trying to be very intentional with my language. Sometimes I mess up, better not perfect. Okay. So in that space, when a person has diabetes, what we're seeing is, we're in that space, we're seeing that, hey, you're based on your A1C, or ideally based on a continuous glucose monitor, we're seeing that your blood sugar is too high at times or even too low at times, right? Well, that helps me then understand that maybe it's the hormone that tells insulin to go to work, or that isn't telling glucagon to not go to work, that we need to, get involved with that. So that one made a lot of sense. When you come over to weight, we have in this country we have so screwed up society with this idea that your total weight tells me anything about your body. It literally doesn't. So the issue is, the other group that this has been approved for from a medication standpoint is anyone who has class 1, class 2, class 3 obesity, which is literally just a number. And if you saw like my obesity, it's not because I'm against obesity, it's because it's like a dumb number. Like it's literally just weight for height. It doesn't tell me anything else on that. It doesn't tell me fat mass versus bone mass. It doesn't tell me or muscle. It doesn't tell me visceral fat versus subcutaneous fat. Like, where's the fat allocated? How long have you, like all these different things. So the issue that we have when we look at these medications for that side of it is, there are so many root causes of why the body puts on fat. All of them are telling us that the body is not, unless it was under fat and now we're repairing, that the body is not functioning optimally. So where this gets a little bit more difficult is, if you are a person in a smaller body and you have not had an excess fat issue on your body, but all of a sudden you tell me, Ashley, literally have been living life the exact same, and I have 3 pounds of fat on me and I don't know where it came from, or I have 5 pounds. The majority of the world has taught us, in the US, has taught us to say, are you kidding me? Like, you're like this big and now you got a little bit of like this big around it. Like, that's ridiculous. Why are you paying attention? Or maybe you need to diet a little bit, like maybe pull off a little alcohol, or maybe exercise a little bit more. No. That is the earliest best signal that we have, that the digestive system and the whole ecosystem, your weight health ecosystem, is not going the right direction. So that could be a signal of suboptimal GLP-1 GIP. Does that person need a medication? There's a question mark. And the question mark is, what is going on in your body and what's the best way to address that? So other patients might be people who, for their whole lives or more recently, other hormonal changes, lifestyle changes, lifing, their brain is like, they're in just what we'll call food noise, but I think it's just noise of, I can't stop thinking about this, and I feel like I'm like really, like it's adding stress and I can't break through. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I actually can't do what I'm supposed to be doing, like those kinds of things. So that might be someone. And then I also have patients, like as an example, see a lot of women in perimenopause. I also see a lot of women who are breast cancer survivors. I've only seen 2 men with breast cancer, but in breast cancer survivorship, one of the things that often is at play is that we're told, for a variety of different reasons, and I'll leave it to other experts to have that debate, many of them are told they can't use estrogen and progesterone or testosterone. Well, okay, so how am I going to protect your bone? How am I going to protect your brain health? How am I going to help you with inflammation as these hormones are going away or just not showing up, or showing up in high amounts and low amounts? One of the ways might be for me to use different hormones, especially if we're seeing, weight gain or bone issue, or that kind of thing. So when we look at who is this medication for, I'm going to start in the opposite. I tell you who it is not for, straight across the board. It is not for anyone who believes that the medication, or has been sold that the medication is the solution. You take this medication and you don't have to do anything else, and it just does everything for you. Absolutely not. But by the way, no medication does that. Like, there's literally nothing out there. So that's number one. And number two, I probably, unless it's under like very significant guidance with your practitioner team, if you're in the midst of a treatment for, say, cancer, for a disease or that kind of thing, I would say probably just cancers, we probably wouldn't use this in that time period. We might, but we probably wouldn't. And the third category is, there is no evidence of safety for this during pregnancy. So I would not use it during pregnancy on that part. Plenty of evidence for safety prior to pregnancy. I know people are all speculating about, what could it mean for sperm quality and what could it mean for, egg and fertility. We may learn other things, especially with other medications, but, in the here and now, I think that prior to conception, And we usually like to say in our ideal world, it might be a year or two prior to conception, but like nobody gets pregnant in an ideal. I mean, like 2%, And then when you get into who is it for, it's going to be for someone who can budget their resources, time, money, and commitment to use this to experiment over a period of time. And I usually like to allocate a year. A year's probably going to be my minimum, not my maximum, but it's going to be my minimum because what I don't want you to do is go on something that is so amped up in terms of the amount, even at the lowest microscopic dose, is so much more intense in your body than your own hormone, and then go off of it, have to go off of it because of cost or anything else. So we want to plan to be able to use it at a low dose to see if we need to increase it, maybe, maybe not, to have it have its effects, to see how we adjust your body around all of that. And then over time, evaluate, hey, if we are going to wean or reduce it because maybe we achieve a fat loss goal or we find out you are pregnant or, whatever, we have time to wean you off and to make sure that we're not seeing a resurgence of what was going on before in that part. It's really, Jessica, we need to have a much more expansive conversation around this, kind of the way that we've expanded the world of the conversation around testosterone from a sex-producing hormone for men to women. We also need it to, hey, it's a part of our brain and it's a part of, overall physiology. I think we need to be thinking about it a little bit more like that. Yeah.
And what I really hear you saying is it's not a quick fix, simple add-on. And I think that is so much because we want a quick fix. I mean, I absolutely understand that we do, especially if there's something about our bodies that we do have that deep-seated. Sometimes it's a trauma, sometimes it's a relationship, sometimes it's just, wow, I've held on to that for a really long time. And now you're telling me there's a way maybe I can let it go.
Right.
Did you know 3 out of 4 U.S. homes have toxic chemicals in their tap water? Even though contaminated water looks clear, it could put you at risk for devastating health concerns, including fatigue, hormone disruption, cognitive decline, and more. Surprisingly, standard fridge and pitcher filters do little to remove most contaminants, and bottled water contains microplastics. So, as I ask myself, what is the solution? If I can't use any of that, where do I go from here? Introducing AquaTrue, the countertop water purifier tested and certified to remove 84 contaminants, including chlorine, lead, forever chemicals, and microplastics. Its patented 4-stage reverse osmosis system goes way beyond ordinary filters. For pure, healthy water you can trust. No plumbing, no installation, and it is beautiful. AquaTrue has been featured in Business Insider, Popular Science, and named Best Countertop Water Filter by Good Housekeeping. Join 98% of customers who say their drinking water is cleaner, safer, and healthier. Head to aquatrue.com now and get 20% off your purifier using promo code MEETYOURBODY. AquaTrue even comes with a 30-day best-tasting water guarantee or your money back. Take the guesswork out of pure, great-tasting water with this exclusive podcast-only offer now at aquatrue.com. That's AQUATRU.com using promo code MEETYOURBODY.
Late night bites with friends? Already hard to beat. That first too hot bite of fries you couldn't wait for, followed by ice cold Pepsi. Now that hits different. Suddenly, the energy kicks back in, the night goes longer, and the laughs don't stop. Because Pepsi brings out more flavor, more fun, and more of the moment. Food deserves Pepsi. Grab a Pepsi Zero Sugar today.
Now back to our show.
Talk to us about the education piece you do with women around nutrition, around exercise, around all the lifestyle pieces that kind of need to be the foundation of all of this.
Yeah, totally. And as somebody this has been my lived experience, I'm going to meet you right where you are. So if you're like I had somebody walk into my office and she said, just clear, I'm here because my doctor won't keep prescribing to me unless I meet with you. And I was like, okay, cool. Should we just call it a day? And she's, I said, is there anything that you're curious about? And she's like, well, no, I mean, just if you were going to tell me that I have to eat differently, she's like, I hate food. I've been in an abusive relationship with it for 30 years. Like, I don't want to do it. I just eat what I want when I want. And she's like, I'm eating so much less now and I'm skinny. And I go, great. I was like, so a little sarcastic there, but I go, great. Okay. So is there anything you're struggling with? Are you struggling with fatigue? Do you have any, like when you go to write on a wall or like wear sleeveless shirts? Do you feel like you've got more hanging skin, or any of that stuff? And we ended up having a really open conversation. And she's like, yeah, okay, so I got a couple things. And I was like, all right, here's the thing. Your body doesn't need food. I'm a dietitian. Your body doesn't need food. Your body needs nutrients. It needs resources. So how we get that doesn't matter, except for the fact that it has to get where it's supposed to go and your body has to be able to use it. So with that person, I actually leaned into the first conversation that we had was leaning into supplementation. And I know all these people are going to be like, oh my God, supplementation. Yep. And I was like, and she wouldn't do it daily. And I was like, all right, I need you to do 5 out of 7 days. She wasn't changing her alcohol. She wasn't changing when she ate, any of that stuff. Well, you know what happened? She got a little bit of hair back. And that was like, she was like, I have been losing hair. She's like, I didn't want to admit it. Like that, was one of the things. And she's like, I think I even am looking a little bit better. And she's like, and I know you told me this was going to happen, but I didn't believe you. But my energy is like almost back. She's like, I have been walking around like just exhausted because one of the things that I told her is the medication is creating fatigue. And it is not because you're not eating. It's because it's keeping you metabolically active while you sleep. So it's suppressing rest and digest. So I need your gut to get the signal and your brain to get the signal for rest and digest. And so it came back. So then she sends me a note. She goes, I don't know if I'm going to do it every day, but I started off this morning with 15 grams of protein and I did it a couple of times last week. So don't tell me to do it, but like, I just feel like that might be better for my muscles. And I was like, okay, like, in that part. Then I get on and she was like, the thing, like, I wish, like my husband works out all the time. He loves working out, whatever. I wish I could work out. She's like, but I hate the gyms. I was always the one who was like bigger at the gyms. She's like, now I'm actually one of the skinny ones at the gym. But you know what? Now people at the gym are like, you're skinny, like, and that kind of thing. And I'm like, okay, you don't need to go to a gym. I have somebody, you get on FaceTime, like just pretend it's like COVID. I was like, plus you guys travel everywhere. You can literally work out with her anywhere. She goes, okay, like, I mean, maybe I'd do that like once a week. And I was like, okay, cool. And then the next thing I know, they're working out together 4 times a week, right? And she's put on muscle and that kind of thing. So the first thing that we have to do, there are 3 ways to approach this. The first is break up with information. There is no information. I was just teaching my community and somebody said, well, I have a scale and the scale said, if this number is high, then I should eat more leafy greens and more of this and more of this. And I was like, okay, there's no robot or AI out there that that can tell you what you should eat more of. I was like, you can always experiment with more of it, but like that is a mass recommendation. They don't know if a hippo is on that scale or if a one-legged person or if a 4-foot-tall 5-year-old. I mean, like literally, they don't know who is on there and they're giving you that recommendation. So done, on that part. So let's break up with mass information and actually understand what our body is trying to tell us. So what I do with women, with men, with older people, with younger people, decode. Are you losing hair? Okay, is your hair changing? I need to know. Is your belly bloated after you eat? Do you poop regularly? How does it smell? When you bite into an apple, is it sweet? When you pee, when you drink 8 ounces of water, how long until you pee? We need insights because your body sends you signals, just like all those check engine lights in the car. And then you're like, oh, that's where I'm supposed to look. That's where I'm supposed to look. I always love to say like, if you go outside and your car doesn't start, but you have like a full tank of gas, you don't go like drain half the tank and go like, well, now does it start? But that's what a low carb diet is, right? Like it's so dumb, right? So that would be the second thing. So first, break up with excess information. The second one is to look for insights. And then the third one is to experiment. So what we are now going to do with adding your GLP-1, it's one of our tools. We're going to do an experiment. And the experiment that we're going to do is because I've already talked to them about like, we've got to get your if your digestion is telling me this, we're going to do this for your digestion, we're going to whatever. I want to see if when we add the GLP-1 agonist, even like the first week, low dose, I want you to tell me how you feel. I want to know how you're sleeping. I want to know how you're pooping. I want to know how you feel during the day. I want to know, like one of my patients said, She's like, every time I walk my dog, we end up in Starbucks. She's like, I live a block away from Starbucks and I end up in there and I'm getting something. She goes, you know what? I've been on my GLP-1 for 2 weeks. I haven't gone into Starbucks. That's a signal. Not saying that's success because I'm not anti her going into Starbucks, but that is a signal. She's like, it just kind of happened that we were walking and I just realized like I wasn't thinking I need to go into Starbucks because what would happen is I usually walk past it, but by the time I'm coming back, I'm like, well, I just did a walk and I kind of deserve my Starbucks and, whatever, like on that part. And I was like, okay, that's a good signal. So that's kind of how we do, this process. And what's really important with knowing your medication and knowing the dose and everything else is if a medication is a daily injection or a daily pill, I want to know how all those things are working through the day, and maybe also like if you still have your cycle, or if your cycle's showing up wherever. We're not going to be able to use that, but if you still have your cycle, we might be wanting to look at it at different times in the month, and understanding. If you're on a 7-day injection, I want to know how you feel about things on day 1 and day 2, how what your body is expressing, and how that's different on day 5 and day 6, because that's also going to tell me, because one of the mistakes that happens is, and it's the way that pharma and a lot of practitioners, and et cetera, is they'll tell me that a patient starts off on the medication, but by day 3 or 4, they're having what they call breakthrough hunger. Breakthrough hunger. Okay, hunger is not a breakthrough. Hunger is something the body should have when it doesn't, like that is an important signal. We do not want to suppress that. Unfortunately, I have a lot of people that are using that as a signal to go up on their medication, and then that suppresses it. It increases the issues with digestive issues. It reduces your nutrient resources. That impacts your bone. That impacts your muscle. That impacts your hair. It negatively impacts your sleep. You see what all of this stuff with the medication working exactly how it's supposed to, but you're on too much of it. And somebody else, I've had other practitioners where they have people split their dose so that they avoid that breakthrough hunger. I want you to experience hunger. I don't want you, there's a line. I want you to be in a place where, hey, the medication is helping you, but it's not, it's like, it would be like using like training. Well, I don't want to say that because then you think like you become a good bike rider. I don't want on that part, but it's like using some assistance so that you can do everything like at an optimal, level. Like I hike with poles, right? And so like that, it makes me safe. It helps me align my body properly. It helps me commit to it. It actually helps me hike longer and I'm stronger, and that kind of thing. So using an assist here, it is a tool. It is not a solution, and it shouldn't be an override for some of those things. Yeah.
And I definitely hear you saying you need someone who is on your team to support you, right? Like this isn't something you just start and then you say, thanks so much, see you later, and you head on your way for 6 months. I mean, you are checking in with people daily. You're making sure they're checking in with themselves. You want constant feedback. You're adjusting as needed. You're not looking at this as, okay, yep, forever, this is what you're on. And I think that's such an important part that's missing here when I hear, kind of, because I'm sure you've heard it too, so much judgment around this conversation from people who aren't willing to just learn. Like, let's just talk. I love what you said about meeting your client where she was, because she came to you with an honest feedback of this is working for me and I have boundaries up that I am not willing to go past. So just give me what I need. But by you meeting her there, she opened herself up to these other things like movement and exercise. And I think that's what's missing when we just head first with judgment into this conversation and assuming, oh, this is just a quick fix or it's a cheat. I'm saying that in air quotes, everyone, because we all are different. What works for us, but also the past and the history we have. I mean, I, as a physical therapist, have seen the gateway into movement for people is vast and varied. And I'm going to meet someone there. I'm not going to close the door because they didn't get into movement in the way I wanted them to. I'm going to meet them where they are and use my tools as a practitioner to help them feel confident in movement. And I think bringing that nuance to this conversation is so important so we don't leave anyone behind.
Well, and there's a reason for it. So, and this is what I think, like, again, just in the way we don't understand and value the human body and weight, like, and just we've miscommunicated all of this. In your fat cells, you have toxins that are stored there. And I like to talk about them as two different kinds of toxins. You have emotional toxins. So many of us trap in our fat, the stories we've told ourselves, our mindset, the abuse that has happened to us, the joy, like I'm in a new relationship, I'm just eating, he loves me, she loves me, I feel good about this. I had my kids, like I'm showing up for them. I'm not, going to be sitting here focused on having a banging body. I'm like, whatever it is, right? And it's in there. And then we also have the legit toxins that is what is stored in our fat cells. If we try to lose all of that too quickly, it is an emotional overload and it is a physiologic overload. And that's one of the things about rapid weight loss that is not talked about enough, where we talk about we might lose muscle, we might lose bone or hair. Absolutely. But those are massive signals that the body inside is like, you are killing me. You're wrecking me and I don't know how to get your attention. So I'm going to make you bald because I know you care about your hair. That's what the body is, trying to say in that part. So I've had patients, I had a patient that we finally, as the backwards RD, I try to be your coach, your partner, I'm actually not a coach, so I want to not use that word. I am your partner, your practitioner on that part, but I am also not your doctor. And I want to be clear about that. But this doctor approach of putting people on scales, I don't care if it's measuring muscle or fat or whatever, but telling a patient that they are not successful on their GLP-1 if they are not losing weight has got to go. Because what happened to my patient was she was not losing weight. She had stopped losing, and at this point, her doctor was measuring total weight. She was not losing weight, and they wanted to go up on the medication. I was like, no, she has a strong history of digestive. I went through all of my list on that part. And I finally said, do you know why she's not losing weight? And the doctor, I'm on the call, I'm angry. And the doctor's like, you're totally wasting my time. And he's kind of flippantly said, well, she's obviously just eating too much or not exercising. And I said, no, her family is shunning her. They do not want her to lose weight. They have made so much fun of her for the weight that she has lost. And she's quite frankly worried about losing her husband, which is the kids. I think it was the third husband in the family, right? Or the third father, or that kind of thing. And we have been having these sidebar conversations about whether or not, could she figure out a path forward to getting healthy? This is going to be a pretty big project. This is not a project about, hey, instead of 30 grams of protein, go to 40 grams of protein, right? And I think we forget that. We forget that when we are unpacking trauma, if we don't do it in a way that allows us to let go of certain things or feel hurt, I do a lot of mindset work. And I'm like, you know what? That could totally be true. You could have been somebody who has tried a bunch of diets before and they worked for a bit of time and then they didn't work. I know that happened for me. I remember the pictures. I was thin this year. I wasn't thin that year, whatever. I'm like, but you could also be the person today who's learning how your body works. And more importantly, is able to give your body what it needs. And your body's going to show up and it's going to get what it needs. And it's going to let go of, release, get rid of, and we're going to do that at a different pace. And it might stay off. Now, you could also be the person where all of that works for, like this patient that came to me post-divorce. She had gained a bunch of weight in the divorce and all this stuff, came to me, 60 pounds. She came to me after she had lost 60 pounds on a GLP-1 because her doctor said, you're ready to come off of it. I did my assessment. I was like, you are not ready to come off of it. Your digestion is a mess. You've lost muscle. You've lost hair. Your bone health is probably not good. I didn't even have the evidence. So we worked for 3 to 6 months on that. We were like, okay, and now we're going to reduce the dose. We started to reduce the dose. We spaced it out. We're working on that part. But then she had a horrible custody battle and financial issue. She ghosted me. I only found out because I had been working with her doctor and her therapist. And her therapist said she's gained 8 pounds and she's too embarrassed to tell you because she feels like she was doing so well with you. And I said, first of all, tell her she should be embarrassed if she gains 10 pounds. I said, so either I need to talk to her or you need to talk to her. But the issue that we have is we don't have people who are stopping somebody when we start to see the body start to regain. You should never regain all of your weight coming off of a GLP-1. If you gain more than 5 pounds back, we need to come back and be like, you aren't ready to be off of this, or we have to figure out another plan. So we put her back on half the dose because she was, these other things were working out. And then like 3 to 6, 9 months later, when this other stuff had passed and she's now been off of it, she also was like, oh, I know I could always use it again, like if I needed to on that part. It is a tool. So I think that's where your point is so valuable, because it's like with any of this, I mean, you're like in PT, it's like therapy, like, in my work, they call it like, nutrition, dietetic therapy, like, on that part. Okay, we can lean into that side of it. But I really think that the way that, I always emphasize I'm the backwards doctor as an RD and like instead of DR. And that side of it is I have a different toolkit, but I have a totally different approach. I want to decode what your body needs and then see if your resources that you're taking in are meeting those needs. That's not going to be how your doctor is going to work at this. And I think that's the mistake. And a lot of people don't want to pay for, because I'm another cost out of pocket. There are plenty of great dietitians that take insurance, but depending on if it's covered, that's where somebody's like, I'm paying for the medication. I can't also pay for you. I don't think you can afford to do this if you don't have somebody who's going to do, the work the way that we're talking about doing it here.
Yes. Yeah. And talk to us about, because you've mentioned the side effects numerous times, and I know people are having questions about that, and this will be fleshed out in the coming years as we have more research. What are the common side effects you see, and how aware should people be about that, and the importance of that day-to-day contact with a practitioner to help them work through that?
Yeah. And with semaglutide, we have been using a version of it since 2005. So let's not yes, there's always things that can come out because we learn a little bit more. Like, I think we're going to learn a lot more about the microbiome composition and just, some shifts, favorable and not favorable, right? And more about the positives of bone health and cardiovascular health, and that kind of thing. Where we get tricky is in the non-peptides, and also things like maybe like a retatrutide, where we don't know what happens when you agonist glucagon, the secondary set of hormones. I choose to think about them as direct effects and indirect effects. Okay. So there's the direct effects of the medication. If you have any underlying digestive dysfunction, which you probably have if you're choosing to use this medication because of where these hormones are made, it will make it worse. It's going to reveal it. It's going to exacerbate it. If you are on this for if it's a 7-day in your system, or if it's a 1 day, as opposed to something naturally 2 to 5 days, you're going to have a significant degree of delay of gastric emptying. At the same time, you're also going to have a significant increase of messaging of hormones getting the message to go to work. Insulin and glucagon don't normally get messaging around going to work or stopping work, or leptin or ghrelin while you're sleeping, because you're sleeping, you're not eating. So those effects are going to be the medication working the way that it's supposed to work. Now, the medication not working the way it's supposed to work is when you're on a higher dose than you should be on. And that means that you have more delay of this stuff, or more, of that stuff going on. You're suppressing your hunger so that you literally don't feel like you feel totally disinterested in food. Or I've heard people who are saying, I'm totally disinterested in life. Like, the flowers don't smell good. I'm not interested, other things, right? So any of that stuff we want to unpack and say that's more indirect, meaning that's like dosage related, and that's going to also be personal. And so some of the other personal things that can come up, there's some concerns around eye health. And are you at risk for, it's not so much blindness, but it's called an optic nerve stroke or optic nerve damage. Well, I went because I was like, I need to know about this. I met with a neuro-ophthalmologist. She reviewed the research. Her statement to me, this is not me, is said that when you have a crowded, I was using the wrong term. I said when you have a small optic nerve. It's more when you have a crowded optic nerve, there is a greater risk factor here of that occurring. So if you are someone who has a crowded optic nerve, so what should anyone listening take away? Go to your ophthalmologist and get your optic nerve assessed, right? Like that, they should just, and that's normal in that's like at Target or wherever they can, screen for, I love Target. So I'm, just saying like on that part. So like things like that. There are other things that we have to that we don't understand, which are if you are reducing. So again, also weight loss, fat loss versus muscle loss, et cetera on that part. If we are doing this in a better way, then what we should be doing is we should be able to get in the resources that our body needs, the amount of protein, fibers, carbohydrates, all the micronutrients, it's all the plant compounds, And our body starts to say, I'm happy. And so as a result, I'm going to shrink fat cells. I'm going to shrink fat cells. I'm going to shrink fat cells. You're going to eliminate the waste product. We're going to see fat loss. I'm going to maintain my muscle on that part because I'm also challenging my muscles with resistance training. And I'm also going to be eating enough to support the muscle and the bone. So if that's not happening, that's your system. That's what I would call an indirect side effect. That's not how the medication works. That's the choices that somebody is making around the medication. And then, some of the ones that are a little bit more like, I think we recognize that all these hormones work in a variety of different places in the body. So as an example, if you have pituitary issues, I was just talking about osteoblasts and osteoclasts and calcium, or if you have kidney issues, or if you have like any of these other things, and if you're on any medication outside of the GLP-1 agonist, you have to have a plan that's personalized for you. Otherwise, this medication could be challenging. One of the ones I'll leave everybody with is, if it's working successfully, you are shrinking your fat cells, well, you better make sure as we talked about, we're eliminating the toxins. But also, I have had people who for months have been on too high of a dose of medication. Somebody was saying to me, I think my antidepressant is like too much, now. And you know what the doctor said is, now that you're losing weight, you're probably feeling better I was so mad. I was like, no, they're on a medication dosage for 300 pounds. They're now 195. Hello, like that kind of thing. So those are the things for us to pay attention to. Yeah.
Okay. I can't believe how much takeaway information that you have provided with us today. So I know people are probably furiously taking notes and also wondering how they can learn more. So tell us where people can find you.
Yes. And you can get the transcript from here. This is what I do when I am overwhelmed by, like, usually for me, it's listening to one about like AI or what I should be doing. Yeah. Get the transcript, pull it apart, and dismiss anything that doesn't relate to you. Like if you're like, well, I'm not taking a GLP-1 agonist, but I'm super curious about my own hormones. Okay, lean into that part. I wrote my book, Your Best Shot. It should be everywhere that books are sold and where they're lent. So if you want to get it from the library, you want to borrow it from a friend, on page IX, there's a QR code. There's also a link. That takes you to my HIPAA-compliant practitioner portal. The reason for that is not that you're becoming a patient of mine, but you can ask protected questions in there. I did my best to answer questions and to give guidance and stuff like that, but it's a book. And I want you to be able to have that. So that's actually a free resource in there. We do also have a 30-day program that people can opt in for. That does, I think it's like $70, but that's one that, people can decide to upgrade into. But we also do these, we answer questions in the community, and I also do these live sessions in there. And then I follow up all my writing and what's going on now in Substack. So I'm over in Substack. I write over there. It's called it's Weight Health with Ashley Koff RD. Should be able to find it in that space. And I also love doing book clubs and get-togethers. So if you want to have me as a speaker, we can also do that part too. So thank you.
That's amazing. And we will have the links to all of that below. And so just remember, this is another part of you needing to know about yourself, know about your body, know how to ask questions, advocate for yourself. And it does take a little work, right? Like it just does, but it is worth it. And like Ashley said, this is another tool that can be a part of your toolbox. If it's not for you, it's not for you, but it has given you more information to move forward for what you need for your health. So thank you so much for this conversation, Ashley. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks so much for listening today. I would love it if you could take a moment to subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. It means a lot to us and it helps our content get out to more women who need it. You can find more of my resources at my website, jessicavalant.com, or find me on YouTube at Jessica Valant and Instagram at Jessica S. Valant.
Hi, I'm Marissa Lonick, host of the Mama Work It podcast, the show for working moms juggling mom life, work life, fill in the blank life. Each week, we talk real motherhood, real careers, and real strategies to help you thrive, not just survive the season you're in. If you're managing meetings, meltdowns, and big goals, this podcast was made for you. Tune in wherever you catch your podcasts.